So as a consumer, since you're incentivized all the time, you are much more familiar with the concept of pull strategy. But as a consumer, you don't call it pull strategy. And as a consumer, you don't really know most of the time what businesses are trying to do. But that's what they're trying to do is they're trying to convince the consumer, make the consumer loyal or interested or more motivated to be buying the product. And then consequently, they are looking for the product, and therefore the brand, the product or the service that they're trying to buy becomes stronger than the channel that is trying to distribute it. Because the channel of distribution for the past 50 years, if not more than that, have been working at becoming the most powerful intermediary, they have therefore gained more and more of a connection with the consumers. And sometimes the consumers don't buy a specific manufacturer brand, but they happy to buy from a distributor. So I had a friend this weekend that was telling me that he's going to Spain for 2 weeks in August, and he bought his trip from Costco. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So you buy your water from Costco, your toilet paper from Costco, your soap from Costco, your vacation from Costco. So it's kind of amazing that the distributor could be having so many different products to offer and services to offer. And obviously it's because they are trying, since they have the relationship with the consumer, they may as well build a brand and where the consumer just essentially doesn't buy just toilet paper from Costco, but they buy everything. Everything can be bought from Costco. They could be buying milk from Costco, and why getting the A2 milk, A2 milk from A2 milk company? If you can get it from Costco, you might as well get it from Costco as well. So that's really what is going on, is that the distribution is being very much becoming the most powerful intermediary in the business, in the market, and therefore they are starting to dominate the relationship with the consumers and with the manufacturer, where in fact many of those distributors don't produce anything. They get it produced by someone else. So what's interesting is you see the store brand being offered, but it's actually a brand that is produced by a real producer who does not have the capacity or the knowledge and resources to make a connection with the consumer because it's so expensive. And the consumer, on the other hand, is becoming very transactional and lazy in transaction, that they want to buy everything from one source because it becomes easier. What the consumer don't realize, the more they buy from one source, the more they actually limit their freedom, in the sense that they are giving so much of their money to the single source that the single source is becoming so powerful that the single source is buying from the producer and is limiting what the producer can do and the number of producers. And therefore, it doesn't happen overnight, but eventually, once the consumer become lazy buying from a single source, they little by little also lose their own freedom and potential choices that they could get, because eventually it becomes one or two choices from one or two distributors, and that's all there is. So that's the world that we live in, where distributors are really have the upper end in the relationship. And that's what manufacturers try to do, is try to innovate in order to have something that is so much better that what the distributor offers is not as good, and therefore they need to gain from the innovation of the manufacturers. The distributors are not extremely innovative. They're very good at distributing, and therefore that's essentially sort of what's left for a manufacturer, is to be innovative in order to have something that nobody has, and then they can control better the distribution by actually giving the distribution to who they want and who is in their favor. So the business is a table that turns, and who is the boss around the table keeps changing because the table keeps turning, and the consumer don't totally realize that. So that's why I wanted to start from this, because that's essentially my transition to talking about retailing. So what is retailing? It's all the activities that include selling goods or services directly to a final consumer. So you could sell it to someone for their own consumption as a personal consumer. You could be a non-profit person, organization, it could be a large business, but they are buying it for their own consumption and non-business use. The retailer power is to work on the assortments that they have. So what are they going to carry? A retailer, biggest focus, not all of them, but in general, the idea for a retailer, and this is in comparison to the wholesaler, is to try to sell not many different units, but of different product lines. So the idea is to have, just to give an example, if they sell shirts, it's to not have a large quantity of shirts, but to have a large quantity variation of the type of shirts that are offered. So in terms of SKUs, SKUs, so this is the unit of models that they sell, they're gonna have a wide number of SKUs, but with a not so deep number of quantity per SKUs. Why do they do that? It's because that's the more choice they offer, the more value they offer to the consumers. And so they have to decide on this width of the assortment, but as well on the depth of the assortment. So if it's a retailer that offers sporting goods, they can try to have a width in terms of all the different sports that they will cover, and a few brands to cover as many as possible of all the sports, with the possibility to offer enough variation that the consumer will be excited to go to that store. Now, you could have another store that just specializes in sports shoes. So in that situation, they're going to focus on just one product category, just the sports shoes, not the socks and the accessories and the helmets and the pants and the shirts and the t-shirts and the sweaters, and just the shoes. And in that situation, it's going to be the same. It's trying to have as many variation of that type of sports shoes. And there's the variation, is how much variation do you offer and how much services do you offer. Services is in the sense that do you let people come in the retail store and look at the product and buy the one that people feel is more convenient, or do you have the possibility for people to get some advices, to have someone help try the product, and how much chances do they have in experiencing the product and having the opportunity to get advices, and then the level of competency from the person giving the advice is another issue. So then you're going to say, well, why don't we do the maximum service? Because if we do the maximum service, we can't lose. The issue is that the maximum service has a cost. And so therefore, you only offer the maximum amount of services if people are looking for that. So if people are not willing, it's like, would you buy gas if it was $7, but someone is putting it in your car? Some people may, but most people would say, no, let me put it in my car and I'll do it for $5. $5, I put it in my car. $6.50, someone else put it in the car. So not everyone wants the maximum services. Obviously, people would want the maximum services if they didn't have to pay for it. But you, as a store, because that a store therefore offers services, you have to take into account what people are willing to pay for. So you wouldn't want to offer no services when people are expecting a high level of services and are happy to pay for it. And you wouldn't want to offer too many services that are sort of over satisfying people. And that's great, but to the detriment that you're not making the profit that you should be making. And then the store atmosphere is this idea that you have to think about the image that you want for your store. So if you want a store that is perceived as being more prestigious, you're going to pay attention to not have too many products being available. All of this is true for a retail store, being online or being physical. If you're trying to sell expensive products, you don't want people to be able to see too many products on a single page. If there is an overload of information on a single page, people are not going to expect this to be very high service, very high quality, very prestigious. But if there's very few products on the page, they would expect it to be more expensive, It could be also an issue that they don't make expectation. A lot of these feelings are very sort of subliminal. Is people don't say, "Oh, I only see a few products. Gee, I'm going to overpay for what I'm going to buy on this website because they're putting too few products on that website." I mean, that's what you think when you're a marketer, and that's what you do, and that's your passion. You sort of make guesses from what you see, but consumers don't do that. Consumers, they just usually the perception is in terms of quality, price, and status. The next issue is the classification of the different retailing that you will have, and obviously it's based on the type of organization, the amount of services that you offer, the depth and the width of your product line, and then the different prices that you offer. So the breadth is what is called, when you look at products, it's the same as the width. So it's a different product line that you offer. So in retailing, it's not called the width. If you were to say the width, I suppose people will understand, but in retailing, that's called the breadth. So the breadth is the number of variations of product lines versus the depth. That's the same that it is for a product, which is the variation within the product lines. So appliances, they have, what is the depth? They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And what is the breadth of this company? If this was a company, it's 4. So they have a breadth of 4 different product lines with, for the appliances, 11 variations of models within the appliances. What type of organization that you have when you're looking at retailers? So there's quite a number, and these are not so confusing, and most of you are very aware of it. So you have the specialty store, the department store, the supermarket, the superstores, discount stores, the warehouse clubs. There's one that is missing there, which is called the hypermarket. So, you know, you have the supermarket, you have the hypermarket. So a hypermarket is a 3 or 5 times the size of a supermarket. So it's a very, very large. It's almost like a mall in itself, a hypermarket. So in the US, you have some hypermarkets. They are very common in Germany, France, and Japan, and less so than in America, but you have them as well. Obviously, the hypermarkets are usually Walmart. Walmart is the one of the largest retail store in the world, and with Costco, they are 2 of the, and Sam's Club, 3 of the largest companies in size selling in physical retail store. Obviously, online, it would be Amazon as being the leader. What is the private label? A private label is a brand which is the brand of the retailer. So when the retailer sell products under their brand, this is called a private label. Oftentimes, the private labels that you find in stores are also produced by one of the products available in the store. So they're usually not produced by the big producer. So if let's say Costco, sorry, was to sell cola flavored soda, they would not have this product produced by Pepsi or Coca. It will be produced by someone much smaller who has a hard time selling through Costco. So making a private label allows the manufacturer to get extra product being produced, much more than what they could produce, because it's one thing to be producing a lot of products, but then you have to sell it. Selling it to a distributor, that's not what's difficult. It's selling it to consumer that is very difficult, because consumers buy something if they save money or if they feel that this is better. Because if they feel it is better, they're going to spend all kinds of effort and resources in order to buy the product. If they feel that it's a good deal because it's cheaper, they don't never heard of this brand. They may not even need it, but the deal is too good to pass, then they will buy the product. That's oftentimes how they buy. This is something that can be manipulated inside the store, but it's manipulated inside the store much more easily by the store, because to get the store to manipulate products, to put it in places where people can see it, most of the time the brand has to pay. So the a retailer buys product. A retailer buys mineral water, bottled water, but they buy different kind of bottled water. They buy the brand that people want. So they're going to buy Arrowhead water because they don't have a choice. People that want to buy that brand, so the retailer has to carry that brand. Then they're going to buy another brand that nobody's heard because they bought it so cheap that they can pass the savings to the consumers. And then they're going to have their private label, which is maybe the brand that sells very cheap to the consumer. And what they're going to do is put this brand in good places so consumers see that. And if the brand that is very cheap was trying to do that, they would have to pay the retailer. So they're making so little money, that's why they're so cheap, that if they start paying the retailer to put it in good places, they're actually losing money. And to start with, they are not super wealthy. Otherwise, they will be advertising all over the place, and they would be therefore Arrowhead water. So that's sort of the battle that you're facing, is you have to find somewhere to survive, and private label can be a way to survive in order to sell more, not under your name, but to be able to produce more at a cheaper price as well, because you'll be producing your bottled water and the one for Costco. Eventually, you'll be making more products and you'll be able to do some savings. Wholesaling is the opposite of retailing. It's all the activity in selling the goods for the sake of those being reused or resold. So wholesaler primarily engage in wholesaling, and retailer primarily engage in retailing. Why do I say that? Because wholesalers, to survive in the past 20 years, have very much developed businesses where they try to also retail. So sometimes there are retailers that become wholesaler, so it's easy for them, or at least easier for them to retail, since that's what they were originally. Wholesaling became a second nature. But for wholesalers to survive and compete against retailers, they have to start selling directly to consumers for their own use as well. So as the most common example is Costco. Costco is normally a wholesaler that sells to businesses, for these businesses to use this product for the business or to resell. But what happens is people have started sort of using their wholesale privilege to start also buying things for their own consumption. And that's why it sort of made the situation a little murky and hard to see. So wholesalers sell and promote the product, obviously. They buy from you and they build this assortment. So what's important is that when you speak to retailers, like I said before, is retailers want a large different type of products, but in small numbers. When you manufacture, you don't make a large variety of different products most of the time. But what you do is you make a large quantity of single or very few variation of type of products. So you need to have an intermediary between the consumer and you, and these intermediaries can be a retailer that could sort of act as a wholesaler, a retailer that has lots of stores, for example, or a mega online retailer that sells a lot of products. They could be buying such a quantity that they will be looking to you as a wholesaler. But otherwise, most of the time, you would want to sell to the wholesaler, because they would buy huge quantity from you, and then they would create the assortments to the retailer. So what does that mean? Is they do the bulk breaking, so they buy thousands from the different manufacturer, and then will sell this to hundreds of different retailers. And so they take the risk of buying so much product and helping you finance your production, because they buy so much from you that oftentimes as a manufacturer, you don't deal with thousands of customers. I mean, not thousands, tens of thousands of customers. It's very complicated. The most normal size manufacturer don't have the capacity to deal with 50,000 clients. It's too time consuming, it's too tedious. So therefore you need this intermediary. And these intermediaries selling to those 50,000 consumers, it's possible you only have 10. So for a manufacturer, it is much easier to speak to 10 buyers than to 50,000 buyers. So those 10 buyers, they take the risk to take your product, they will be financing it. So you only have to make sure 10 people are paying you. And these people may be giving you a deposit or giving you some kind of purchase order. And this purchase order can be negotiated with your bank in order to get some money before they start actually paying. So that's also very convenient because wholesalers normally are a company that have to be solvable. They will allow you to get paid later, but through some credit and financing through banks or some insurance company, you could start getting some money before you have even delivered to them. So this may seem like a tangent, a small detail, but it's very, very important. How do you get credit in when you have a business? You get credit because you work with large wholesalers. Large wholesalers have a credit rating, which allows your bank, based on who's buying, to give you the money, some part of the money that these people are supposed to pay. And the problem is you will pay an interest to the bank for giving you money ahead of receiving it from the wholesalers, but it's part of the bank taking risk as well and having an insurance on this wholesaler, and then realizing down the road that the wholesaler is actually paying, and then they give back some information to the credit bureau, and that's how wholesalers and businesses get to be highly rated and get more and more credit and more delay for paying. So that is very, very important to understand. The wholesaler also collects information. They know about your customers. They may be giving you some advices in the future needs, helping you understand better what you should be innovating, what is good about your product, what's not so good about your product, what consumers say. Maybe consumers say things where you can start realizing that there's more than one type of consumers. Maybe you need to create multiple products in order to make products better for different targets. So that's all the tasks. And obviously they're looking at the inventory, they're storing, and they are moving the product around. When the product moves around, why, for example, storing and transportation is important? Why would you think that these are two important tasks? Transportation or warehousing? Why would it be important? So
the cost of transportation would affect what you sell your product for?
Well, but here what I'm saying is that the wholesalers, so like, let's say you manufacture everything and everything is in your warehouse, in your factory in Northridge, but you sell very little in Northridge because you make 100,000 whatever products. You make 100,000 sausage a week, and you keep making sausages, and you need wholesalers because they're going to do warehousing and transportation. Why does that matter? Why anyone cares? So I give you another example that I didn't think it would happen in my lifetime, and it just happened. And I don't think it'll happen again in our lifetime, anyone in the class. It should have never happened. It's even, I'm going to tell you, and 70% of the class are going to go, what? Did that really happen? This was in December 2020. December 2020, you were a manufacturer of gas. You know how much they sold the barrel in December 2020?
Like $20?
So yeah, $20. No, they were paying you to get the gas. They are paying people to come and pick it up. It's like it's like Costco paying you to go pick up things inside the store. It's like, you get gas, I don't know, from the Chevron gas station, wherever you live. Imagine every time you go get gas, they give you money. It's hard to believe, right? So in December 2020, the manufacturer of gas were giving you money to go pick up the gas. Like the wholesalers were paid to pick up the gas. So then you say, come on, I mean, how much was the gas? I try to remember in 2020. Yeah, I was not driving very much because I was scared to death. I was in my bed 24/7, waiting for good news, not moving anywhere, but the gas was not that cheap. Yeah, no, the gas was not that cheap. It was $3. It was like, yeah, $3. But how much were the manufacturer selling it for? The manufacturer was giving you $1 for picking up the gas. So if you were in Saudi Arabia or in Iran or whatever, or Kuwait or whatever, they were paying their wholesalers to pick up the gas. And why were they paying? You can check it. You would Google gas prices, negative gas prices. So then you are saying, what? And they were still selling it $3. Wow, they must have been making a lot of money for selling gas that they were paid to pick up. Oh yeah. Well, not a lot of people were getting gas, so they were mostly warehousing. What do you mean they were warehousing? Well, back at that time, the manufacturer of gas didn't have enough space anymore. They were they couldn't stop the pump. You see, a gas pump is in the desert or whatever you find it in Africa, is not something that you can turn on and off. You know, it takes months to put together for the gas to come out, and then it takes weeks or months to stop the gas to come out. And so this pandemic was a big surprise to everybody, and the way it went was a big surprise to everybody. So the gas manufacturer didn't want to stop the pumps. And if they stop the pumps, they say, what if the whole thing comes back and people want gas? I'll have nothing, you know? So they kept pumping, but they said, let's warehouse it. But the wholesaler says, you know what? I have more than I can. So they were looking for people to lease or rent. And after they rented everything they could, they told people, come and pick up the gas and we'll give it to you for free. And after that, they were paying them to come and pick up the gas. So that way they were just investing, if you want, not to stop the pump. It was cheaper to give the gas for free and even pay people than to stop the pump. So then that's a crazy example that I never thought that I would ever give you, because obviously this is a wholesaler dream to have the government of Norway or Saudi Arabia calling you to tell you to come and pick up gas, and they pay you. Obviously, it doesn't make any sense. Well, that's what has happened. And so when you're a manufacturer, you keep producing, and your dream is to produce more and cheaper and better. And as you're doing this, you need the wholesalers. And the last thing you want to hear is the wholesaler telling you, oh, you know what? I'm not coming and pick up anything. I'm not transporting anything. Because while all of this is being transported and warehoused, it's out of your hands. And someone is paying for it. Someone is paying for the transportation. It's done in your warehouse. You know, it's like output. You know, it's like you play a video game and you have someone that takes things and then they throw it. And then on the other side, someone has a truck and catch the thing. But suddenly imagine there's no more trucks. If there's no more trucks, nobody's paying for the transportation, nobody's paying for the business to keep rolling. Then what do? You stop. And if you stop, that's when things become very bad, because you have to pay bills, you have employees, you have to get them busy, all of this. So, you know, this is important to understand that, because that's the world that we're living in right now, which is a world that we have created where it was always more is more is more. Tomorrow is better. Tomorrow is better because it's more. Tomorrow is more produced, cheaper, bigger, and all of this. And now you can see there's a lot of things that stopped. Usually in May, I go to a motorcycle show. There's a motorcycle show in Los Angeles. It's a beautiful show, thousands of motorcycles. You see the new motorcycle, all the tunings and accessory and so forth. I received an email this morning from the organizer of the show that said, sorry, the show is canceled. And the reason the show is canceled is because the motorcycle manufacturers have a hard time even delivering the motorcycle, because they have a hard time producing them, because they're missing so many parts because of the pandemic and the issue with the supply. So that's what happens, is when there's nobody warehousing the supply, then you go get it, there's nothing there, and then you have to wait, and then it's a domino effect. So wholesaling, retailing is very important for our economy, and understanding of how this works is very important, because that's every day is sort of a discovery. It was not like this before. Before it was always, at least, you know, I'm not like 100 years old. I don't know that it was as the same 100 years or whatever, but I would say, you know, since the 50s, it has been more and more and more and more. And now we have a world where it's, I don't know if it's going to be less, but it's at least looking like there's a little bit of a pause on many things. There's a slowdown, definitely. When you're looking at wholesalers, you have the manufacturer wholesaler. So manufacturers, in order to deal better with the wholesaling, what they do is say, you know what, I'm going to wholesale because I'm tired of the wholesaler not doing the job the way I want to do it. So they start also wholesaling. But then you also have the idea that you have wholesalers that says, you know what, I'm going to be wholesaling, and I'm going to be at the same time retailing, and I'm going to be at the same time making my own brands and wholesaling. So they are very much of a merchant, not so much a wholesaler. Is they take advantage of the fact that they are wholesaler to do other things. And then you have the third one, which is called the broker or agent. Broker and agents are very important. Broker and agents are the one that the students are the least experienced with. One of the best jobs you can have that 0.00% students know that it exists unless they know about real estate, because obviously real estate broker are very common. Or maybe you're thinking about a broker in the finance industry or the insurance industry. So these are more famous, but you could be a broker of anything. You could be a broker of furniture. You could be a broker of plants. You could be a broker of sugar. You could be a broker of, I don't know, uranium broker. A broker is someone, unfortunately, most of them are lazy, that says, you know what, I want to get rich fast. And they figure out the best way to get rich fast legally is to be a broker. And it's true. Being a broker is the fastest way to get rich, yes. Why do brokers get rich and faster than anyone else? Why?
Because they're legally able to sell or purchase, that commodity for their clients. They're just an agent.
Yes, but you're not really it's not very clear what you mean. I'm sorry. Thank you for responding, but what do you mean?
Well, they serve as an agent to their client, and they're the only people who are able to make that transaction. For example, real estate. It's either you use a broker or an attorney to purchase real estate.
So yeah, there's a level of limitation. There's a level of exclusivity, but that's not what's the big difference. So I give you an example. Next week, there's the biggest trade show in the world for the wine and spirits. This trade show is called Pro Wine, Professional Wine. And so that show is like 30 years old. It's Pro Wine. It's in Germany. It's the biggest one in the world. And it's in a city called Düsseldorf in Germany. And it's like this every year. Every year in May, here's Pro Wine. In fact, it's not May. It's May this year because of the pandemic. It's all screwed up. Normally, it's February. So it's in May this year, first time. And so normally, I go to Provine. Or most of the time, my father goes to Provine. When he goes to Provine, he rents a booth. So a booth is $10,000 for like a small space. Then you have to get the electricity, and all the furniture, and some display and all that. So you can add, as a minimum, another $5,000. So it's $15,000. Then you have to travel there. You have to get some models to help you, some people to show things. You put some ads in some magazines and all this. So together, the travel, all this, and you easily $30,000. How long does it last? It lasts 3 days. So you spend $30,000. this year, I'm not going to provide. My dad is not going to provide. We're not going to provide. Yeah, great news. Why? We're saving $30,000. Well, yeah, but it's not so good because we're not going to be at Provine. We're always at Provine. Everybody's going to say, hey, where are they? They're not at Provine. You know, it's not very good. However, we did something different. What do you mean? We've got a broker. So there's someone that saw that there was us that are not going to go, but there's like many brands. The world has changed, so a lot of people don't jump on trade shows the way it used to be. And so a lot of brands said, you know what, I think I'm going to pass this year. So this individual, what they said, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go see these brands and say, hey, you're not going to Provine? Okay, I will go to Provine and I will be your broker. I will pay for the fee, for the booth, for all of this. But instead of having just your brand, I'm going to have 10 brands that are not going. They usually go, that are not going. So the 10 brands, you know, I ask them to pay $1,000 and I represent them. And then when I sell the product, I make a percentage. I make 5%, 10%, 15%. Why do brokers get rich? Is because they don't have to own 10 wineries, 10 distilleries, 10 businesses. You know, owning 10 businesses, the 10 businesses that they're going to represent probably will cost $20 million. Not too many people have $20 million in the bank. And this is just to buy them, but then you have to pay for a lot of things. And so you need maybe another 20 on the side in order to run it. So not many people have 20 or 30 or $40 million. But a lot of people, at least many more people, have $30,000. So broker, the beauty of a broker is you could be pretending to be me. You could be pretending to be owning this house, but you didn't pay a dime for it. So what do you pay? You pay your time, you pay some advertising, you pay the fact that you work 7 days a week, 24/7. You don't complain, you're a broker. You represent this person. You're like the facade. You're just a facade. And you act, you have a business card and it says Paul Smith, you know, agent for Aitachi, BMW, whatever you want. And this person can speak in the name of this company as if it was this company, but they don't have the inconvenience of having to spend all of this money to own this. So you could say, you know what? Oh, I like that. Could I be a broker of ski resorts? I'm going to sell ski resorts. I can't afford to be the owner of a ski resort, but I'm going to specialize at buying and selling ski resorts. I'm going to find the people that want to buy a ski resort or sell a ski resort. And I do this during the winter, but during the summer, I'm going to buy and sell golf courses, you know, like golf resorts, you know, like 20, 50, $100 million golf resorts. I can't afford a 20, 50, $100 million golf resorts, but I'm going to try to find out who are the people that own them and who are the people that buy them. And maybe that takes me to fly first class and go to the right restaurants and be part of the right country club or whatever. That's going to be my investment. My investment is the membership in the country club. And from there, I make my relationship. And then people tell me I have this to sell. Okay, so that's what brokers are very interesting, because you could say, you know what, what's expensive? Oh, expensive. I mean, oil is expensive. You know, I'm going to be a broker for oil. I'm going to know the people that manufacture and the people that, and I'm going to put myself in the middle and take 2%. And if I take 2% on millions and millions that I can sell, because I make the connection, you're just the connector. You just make the connection. And you have a contract that allows you for making the connection between these people, gets you to have 2% on whatever they do for the next 5 years. And so that's why brokers get you very rich, because the investment is really low. And if you do, obviously, you know, if you do this for, I don't know, if you do this for milk versus you do this for, you know, gold, you may get richer faster with gold that you will do for milk. But I'm not even sure, because maybe the people in gold there's lots of them versus in milk, there's not so many. So everything can be bought and sold. And it's not always the people that buy that are the best buyer, and it's not always the people that manufacture that are the best sellers. So oftentimes they need intermediaries that are not good at making it or not good at selling it to the consumer, but they are good at knowing who is who. The who is who is super important. So that's why you see those who is who in real estate, because that's normally what it is the people that sell their houses, they go, you know what, who am I going to use? Oh, there's this pretty girl that seems to be making millions. She has the best brochure and the best picture and the best white, shiny white teeth and so forth. That's who's going to sell my house because she seems to be rolling in dough. So she must be doing well and sell my house. And the one buyer is the same. It's like, oh, I want a good house. I'm going to go to the best place. And so does that make sense? Who are brokers? And does that make sense? That if you want to ever get rich and fast, you should think about brokers a little bit more. So the trends in wholesaling is there's a consolidation within the industry, which means there's less and less wholesaler. Why there's less and less wholesaler? Well, because consumers are buying directly to the manufacturer, which is great because that gives a little bit of power to the manufacturer. Retailers are doing more and more wholesaling. So therefore the wholesalers between the retailer and the manufacturer are less important. So wholesalers are really squeezed. The distinction between wholesalers and retailers is getting squeezed. However, wholesalers can start providing more services. And that's what I was telling you before, where part of the services for the wholesaler is to start doing things that are closely looking to being a retailer, where they will be more flexible in the quantity that you sell. So for example, you're in the fashion industry and you want to make some nice shirts, some nice pants, some nice t-shirts. So you go to downtown LA and you look for the best fabric that is really fashion, nice fashion. When you go there, they tell you that this fabric, you cannot have it because it's an exclusivity of someone else. And then you say, oh, that's the one I wanted. I could have done so much better with this new design of material. So then you look for another material, but you find there's another material that is almost as good, but you need to buy 20 miles of this. 20 miles. I can't buy 20 miles of that, you know. I can buy maybe 600 yards, you know. I can't buy that long. Oh, they say for 600 yards, we don't sell this collection. It's the older collection. So for smaller quantities, you can't buy the new collection. You can only buy the old one. Yeah, but I'm a small guy. How am I going to buy the new one? This is all screwed up. So then that's the way the world was until now, where wholesalers are not playing those games anymore because they don't have as much upper hand as much as they had before. They're happy to see someone comes and buy anything. So they're going to say, so you want to buy? Okay, 100 yards? Okay, perfect. Here's 100 yards of whatever fabric. So that's what's becoming more the trend, which in a way is good because you see the people who have the upper hand, it should not be the wholesaler, and even it should not be the retailer. But obviously we live in a world of Walmart, Amazon, Costco. So that's a sort of I'm formulating a dream that they should not have as much power. But they have that much power because the consumer are giving them that much power. Like I said before, people are spending so much money in these single channels that they make them really, 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 really very rich. And they became so rich that eventually they are able to manipulate and control the consumer. So the consumer got screwed up by being so focused on single places. So who has the upper hand? The consumer. That's number one, because the consumer, they can always spend the money where you want. I know they don't spend their money where they want. They spend their money most of where they've been told to spend it. People are sort of robotic and keep doing the same thing, and they don't sort of analyze very much. But that's a different subject. So wholesalers, in order to continue being competitive, sometimes they have to look outside of the current market, and oftentimes they look at overseas and becoming a wholesaler overseas. So now we're moving to the last P, the P of promotion. And so we just finished the P of place. And the P of promotion is made of 6 different elements. The most common one that people think when they think about promotion is advertising, but there's also public relations, direct marketing, personal selling, digital marketing, and sales promotion. So advertising is selling a product in a way that the brand selling is identified and it's non-personal. It's sold through a medium that is broadcasted, a lot of people gaining it. It's not specific to you. The most specific to you is personal selling. Someone knocks at the door, someone is in a dealership, and then you come in a store and they are a salesperson and they speak to you and they give you the pros and cons and sort of try to direct you. That's the most personal. Then direct marketing is also very personal in the sense that direct marketing is like someone calling you. Usually they have information, they have database on you, they just have more than your phone number and sending you a text. They know of some past habits and therefore they sort of through some algorithm guessed based on your past habits, what are your future habits. So they directly contacting you through a mass robotized, could be a phone call, could be a text, could be an email, could be a catalog, a mailed-in catalog. That's direct marketing. Digital marketing is the fact that you're going to have a website. So it's online, it's through an app, or it's through the social media, the way you communicate. And then the last one, not the last one, the sales promotion is when you provide incentives to people. So you give people a coupon, you give people a 20% off, you give them some kind of discount, and that usually is supposed to stimulate them for a short period of time to buy something that they may not even need. Maybe something that they wanted, now they see the promotion, they buy it, or it could be something they never thought of, but with the promotion, they are motivated. And then the last one is public relations, which is essentially creating content. It's not just creating content, but we're going to leave it to this just for right now because I'll go in more depth later. So what are the 4 main objectives of communication? The first one is to inform. So I've had, it was just not very long ago, just yesterday afternoon, I was speaking to people that kept saying we need to educate the consumers. You cannot educate the consumers because that's the role of the government. So it's a long time objective, and the verb is not appropriate. It's to inform. Informing consumers is great, but most businesses, they want to make a sale. And so informing is the first step. Informing is very important. You don't want to go straight to the sale, which would be persuading consumers. Informing is important because if you're too aggressive, eventually you can turn off consumers. And consumers, they need to sort of put together the information. They need to see their benefits. They need to see that you are not predatory on them, but you are working on getting them to learn. So in some way, to educate them, but again, you don't want to use these words. That's why inform is very important. Past informing, you want to start making some sales, and that's the purpose of persuasive advertising. Persuasive is this idea that you're going to try to find some incentive, some not just incentives, but also some, put them in a position where they feel that they're ready, and it's important. And then comparative advertising is what you may want to do is to, because sometimes consumers have perception that there's one brand that they know very well, and they have the habit, the common habit and ritual to repetitively buy that brand. And what you may want to do is convince them that there is other alternatives. So comparative advertising is to recognize the fact that they really like that brand and then use that brand to as the platform to sort of explain why your brand is better. And then reminding is, it's very important because that's the one thing that people oftentimes forget is you cannot stop advertising. There's some brands that constantly advertise and they spend millions of dollars, Nike, Adidas, Pepsi, Marlboro, this, Apple, they spend a lot of money advertising. They have some of the largest budgets. However, if they stop advertising, they will see their sales go down. So reminding advertising, it may be a reminding from focusing on the information, reminding of the persuasion, reminding of the comparison, but it's the idea. It's you have to constantly think about the people that bought before and remind them that they were satisfied and they need to continue buying. So the communication model, it looks complicated on this slide, but let me explain it very quickly. Is you have two important actors. And so they are the one yellow and one green. The most important is the receiver, the consumer. But before that, you have to have someone to send the message. And so that's called the sender or the source. Then you have the message, and then you have the media that you use in order to convey this message. So when you have a message, you have to think about the message being visual or verbal. So it's an image or it's a text. How much of the image, on a specific space, you have like a 10 inch by 12 inch in an ad, in a magazine, how much do you write versus how much do you show an image? How much do you talk about the features of the product versus how much do you talk about how you feel using the product, or how do you look, how you would look, if you were to also use this product, you look like the person that is inside, the actor, the source of this message. Then the channel is very important because not all channels are equal. Now I think this becomes more and more obvious. It just takes to look at, if you still look at TV at different hour of the day, and you will see the type of advertising that they show are very stereotype of the type of people that watch the show. So if it's if there are a lot of commercials for medicine product and special shower system if you have disability, and reverse mortgage and all of these things, you can be sure that most of the people that are watching the TV at the same time as you tend to be over 60 years old. If you see a lot of people that messages that have to do with losing weight, you can imagine that most of the people there will be the type of people that probably have some kind of weight problem. So the channels are the same channel at different time of the day, different days of the week is very different. But here again, the type of people and the average income of someone that reads a magazine such as Guns and Ammo is not the same income than someone that reads the Wall Street Journal. So there's a variation of readers and readership for the different channels. Same thing, if you think about the radio, I don't know if you still listen to the radio, but you have different channel for different age group. And so that's the idea is, depending on your age group, you wouldn't want to, let's say your age group is very young, you wouldn't want to be putting your message on a channel where most of the people are much older, because people will hear the message, people may even remember the message, they may even like the message, but if it's not a product that is really meant to be for them, they're not going to go and be motivated and seek to buy this product. So then the receiver is the consumer, and that's what's very important, is really understanding who is the consumer and what do they want to hear. So that goes to what's between the source and the message. It says encoding, encodes. So encoding is using the information that the consumer wants to hear. Like if I speak right now and I say, I keep talking like this for hours and hours, you're going to listen to me, maybe fall asleep. But if I say, talking about encoding and decoding will be in quiz 2. So suddenly by mentioning the fact that it's going to be in quiz 2, you will be decoding it because you raise the involvement. You make people more interested. You get their attention. So mentioning that it's in quiz 2 gets your attention, and therefore then you pay attention to what I have to say. So if I say that this is important when you use you do vlogs on YouTube because you want to use the right keywords in the title of your YouTube video, but you've never done a YouTube video, you're not that interested, and therefore it doesn't get your attention. But if I talk about the quiz, the final, maybe that gets attention. So decoding is, did the consumer understood the message and had the right reaction to your message that you anticipated based on what you encoded in the message. It's a little bit, to simplify it even further, is, you know, when you search on Google, there is words that are more searched or give you more results. And that's kind of the thing is, and you encode what gets people more turned on, your specific targets, not universal, because that's almost not possible. But the more you have a specific word associated with the target. So the target right now is buying electric cars, not based on reliability, but based on status. People used to be buying cars based on status too, but reliability for most cars, most consumers was number one. Now, for most buyers of electric car, it's not the reliability that matters. Is it a high status recognized brand? And so when you do the encoding, trying to sell an electric car and getting people interested in the message, you're not going to talk about the reliability because they're not interested in that. You're going to talk about how the car looks good, the design, the engineering, the fact that people that are executives and wealthy people are using it, and they go to functions and VIP events with this car. It looks really good and expensive. That's what they want to hear about. Okay, so that's the idea of the communication channel. And then you can see people reaction. So did they buy the product? Did they recommend the product? Did they memorize the message? Did they think this was a good message that make them want to buy the product? That's the feedback that you want to collect. So what are the steps? First steps is to define who is your target, because that's who you're going to make the message for. You, like, as I mentioned many times, if you're selling, you know, and that's sort of the problem with A2 milk company, is that their main targets are the kids, and yet the packaging does not look like a packaging that would make a kid very excited. So since it's the kid, the main target, why don't we make the packaging to look good for the target? Then you determine what's the communication message that you want to work on. First, you need to determine how much do people know. So it's like they've never heard. It's not the same as if they are just about to buy. So first thing is, have they heard? How much do they know? Based on what they know, do they like it? Then how much do they like it? Based on liking this product, what other product do they like? And what preferences do they see between the products? And how much do they feel that your product is definitely better than the other one? That is a definite, what's the name? Definite preference based on what they see that you have favorite. You know, you have a favorite because there's something that you do. So with A2 milk, it's pretty easy. You know, awareness, I mean, it's not there yet. People who are aware, how much do they know? They know quite good. Do they like? I think the liking will be there. Do they prefer it? I think it would be very good. And then the conviction probably also very high, because they wouldn't buy it again unless they were convinced that it helps with digestion. Now, it's the role of someone else, you know, to do better than A2 milk. And I think some companies have already started to do some very significant moves, such as Alexander Farm with the organic product, which is sort of changing the key of the features. Now, maybe the features is not just to be A2 protein, A1 free milk, but it's also to be organic. And then someone has to move again the just noticeable difference to something else. And that's what that's why just noticeable difference is important. Is what do people want? You don't move it based on what you think they should want, but you move it on what you know that they will want. That way you already sort of anticipate their response. Then when you create this message, you need to think about the content, the structure, and the format. So the content is, you're going to use different type of rationals. The rationale is, there is features and benefits, and therefore that's a rationale, very logical. But there could be another type of message more focused on the how you feel. how you make people feel and how people feel using this brand. Then there's the moral appeals. Maybe this brand is made in California, and therefore there's the idea that you want to buy local. So A2 milk in California is only from A2 cows from California. And the cows are well treated, and the cows have a nice retirement, and the cows don't suffer. And so there's a lot of moral appeals that you could do with A2 milk. Then the message structure is, do you talk about the conclusion is, like sort of with A2 milk, yeah, help a cow buying A2 milk. So that's sort of drawing the conclusion, is help a cow buying A2 milk. Or you build on the argument. Do you know that most of the milk is bad because it's mass produced? The industry is not treating the cows in a human way, and not only it's making the cow produce bad milk, but it makes the consumer lose the opportunity of getting the most benefits from the milk, and in addition, potentially getting bad digestions. Therefore, support cows that are well treated, because you will get from it. So that's the conclusion. But you could start with the conclusion and explain why you have this conclusion, or you could go through the logical argument of building up to the conclusion. They're both good, but they have pros and cons. Giving them the conclusion at the beginning is great because you help them quickly get attention and see how important is this. Here's the result. They see the result important, they listen to your argument. But then, it takes them to really switch on and pay attention. If you go through the story and build up the argument to the conclusion, it's more logical and it's easier to process for them. Conclusion to the argument, harder to process. Building the argument to the conclusion, easier to process. So here again, it depends on how much time you have, and it depends also on the type of consumers that you have. More sophisticated consumers, more educated consumers may work fine with having the conclusion from the get-go. Again, knowing your target makes all difference. And then the message format and illustration, so forth. We'll look at this in just a minute with some examples. But the idea is when you communicate, you don't try to get, it's not very difficult to think that through communication you can get a sales. So that's why there's a lot of people that says, oh, I don't advertise because it doesn't give any results. The problem with advertising is that to be successful, you need continuous and repetition. And therefore you cannot say, I spent, at least for advertising, I spend $1, I get back $1. That's why there's some type of communication that are better at spending $1, getting $1, and some other methods that are not as obvious, even though in the long run, they usually provide more money, but you have to have the capacity to be able to invest at the beginning. So just in other words, giving people a 10% discount is the best way, because you give them a 10% discount if they buy. If they buy nothing, you didn't lose 10%. If they buy something, you lost 10%. But it's better to lose 10% and still make 10% than to not sell and you add the potential to make 20. The potential to make 20 when you sold nothing is you made 0. The potential to make 20 when you sold 100, but you give them a 10% incentive, you still made 10. So sales promotion, this is what's called, it's the best one in the sense that you don't lose money unless you sell. And if you sell, you make less money, but you still make some money. But the problem with mass communication, such as advertising, is you just don't know. You spend, you put an ad on a race car, and this race car goes to the races, and you spend $100,000 on this race car. You don't know that this is going to generate any sales. It's hard to measure the impact, but there is an impact. And so if you think about Red Bull and the amount of advertising that they do, and knowing that people are buying it because they believe that it gives you wings and so forth, it does have work. So advertising works, and the bigger you are and the bigger your budget is, the more it works for the broadcasting, and the more your budget is very constrained, the more you need to focus on methods that are very one-on-one. You spend $1, you make $1. So Okay, so very quickly on the appeals, you see the appeals have different benefits. So if you use the rational appeal, the advantage is that at least you seem to be giving some real value to the message. Is you informing people and telling them, if you take this, it's going to work, and if it works, you have your solution. But it's a little cut and dry, and people oftentimes, they need more than just the benefit. They need to feel that this is sort of benefiting their ego. And so benefiting people's ego can be more than the benefits that they get from the functionality of the product. And so benefiting the ego is very important, but you have to be careful, because if you're selling some aspirin or some medicine, maybe you don't want to think that the emotional appeal is the most important. Working on essentially, the cause and effect is what should really get people interested in buying medicine, not the fact that it's for rich people or poor people. I know that fear is a sort of a emotional appeal, and it's possible to sell anything with fear, but there is sort of rules of ethics as well in what you use in order to get people to be motivated. So another one, two that I didn't talk about that I want to talk about very quickly is humor and sex. So using humor when you communicate is very good because it gets attention. And that's the same situation with sex. Sex and humor gets really good attention. The problem with sex is it gets attention on the message, but not so much on the content. Oftentimes people are sort of entertained by this, and they don't remember what it was about. And it doesn't work for everyone, for every culture, and for every situation. Sex is more appropriate when there's some kind of relation between what you sell and sex. I mean, you're selling mattresses, maybe sex could have a connection. Humor, the big problem with humor is the fact that it's not universal. So every time you're making messages where you're using humor, you have to think about there quite a large percentage of people that are going to be turned off by the message. So that's the danger of humor. The structure and the format, I talked about it before. And so let's look at some examples. The structure and format is important because it's oftentimes the part of the creative element of communication, which is you need to grab people's attention. So in the way you're presenting it, on what you're doing. So, there's the Wiener Schnitzel car. The Wiener Schnitzel car looks like a big hot dog, and it goes all over the place. So obviously, that's concept is because people don't drive a hot dog car. And when they see a hot dog car, they can't help to pay attention. And after they see 2 or 3 times, it's sort of comfortable and memorable. And it may help them at that moment to think about, I need to go eat. I'm going to get it from Wiener Schnitzel. She's a poster for Red Bull. And obviously, you don't see a bull, but you see someone's back, or some kind of design of a muscle where it looks like a bull. So it's sort of artistic and gets attention. Here is an ad where you can just see a car. And the idea is it beautifies the product. So luxury goods are oftentimes like this. You just see the product and it's beautiful, it's artistic. So it's the quality, it's very fashion, it's the quality of the photo and the amount of time that they spent doctoring these pictures to be as pure and clean as possible. So that will catch people's eyes and get their attention. This one is the fact that it's surprising. So you obviously can see someone's rear, and you can see someone's rear, but you wonder why there's this sort of a flame, and then you see the brand, and the brand is some kind of cream. When you have a irritation, you could use this cream in order to soothe the irritation. And therefore, what's good about this specific ad is it gives you attention, it helps with the memory, and it also gives you some kind of rational, has a lot of layers of good good deed for communication, for sure. This is I used ads from different times because obviously this one is from the late 60s. And you're wondering why I would show you one that was successful in the late 60s, because people's brain has not changed that much when it comes to getting people attention. And also, all the ads that I just show you right now were ads that won whenever the year those ads were showing as the #1 best ad. So this one as well, the Volkswagen won many prizes for being one of the best ad. And you have to put it back into perspective. When in the late 60s, the cars in America, the American cars were huge. They were twice the size of a Beetle. And so it's even crazy to think that this had any chance, you know, I think on paper, that car didn't have much chance to be successful. And obviously, even if you don't know much about cars, you know how successful was that car. Extremely successful, and these ads were very helpful. They won prizes for best advertising legend of the past 50 years and so forth. And so that was pretty gutsy to take a full page in a magazine and keep it pretty much blank and just have this small Beetle on the corner and have this sort of crazy, little arrogant message saying it makes your house looks bigger. Someone had to have the benefit, the courage to do that. And they did, and it paid off. It paid off, yes. So this one is an ad which is not from the US, it's from Europe. And it was for a car that actually was not very successful. But the company called Renault is a French company. That company is very successful, but not that exact model. But that ad also was very much of a classic in the world of advertising because they did something that is very hard for the consumers to do. So getting consumers' attention here is the fact that there is some distracting feature where you see something missing. And most people's brain, when they see something missing, they cannot help to complete, to close the loop. So it's called processing, image processing. So when people look at this, they can't help to process the fact that they take the car that is exact same shape on the right side and then shift it to the left side. And when you do this, your brain processes the backgrounds. And as you're processing the backgrounds, you actually see the car in different situations. So if you were to say, oh, you could use this car driving in the mountains when you're going on vacation, but also when you go out and it's a special event, it's a VIP, you know, festival or whatever, you could be using the car to be able to put these two environments together. Or maybe the only way you can do it is separately. But if you do it separately, it's just an image. People are not going to process it. But by putting one next to the other like that, this was a major discovery and successful ads from a very large advertising agency. So the next step is you choose the different channels that you're going to use. So again, you know, should we use radio? Should we use social media? In social media, should we have an app? Should we have use Instagram? Should we be on Facebook? Should we not be on Facebook? Where should we be, and so forth? The other issue is the credibility of the source. So whoever is sending the message needs to have some level of credibility. So I'm going to try to sell this medicine. Should have a famous doctor from a famous hospital, and this person has a white blouse, and the white blouse says the name of the hospital. That's pretty ultimate. It could be even someone from the government, who is a famous person that recommends the medicine. So the credibility of the source is very important because it has an impact on how people react. But then you could say, you know what, this doctor and all this is going to cost a lot of money, and there's a lot of liability in picking the doctor and then licensing the doctor, and it's complicated. So why don't we just use someone that looks like a doctor and we put them a white blouse? This person can't be too young, can't be too old, because if he's too old, how would they know? You know, there's all kinds of perceptions. And so that doesn't cost you very much because you just use the model and you just put a white blouse on them, and it doesn't even say hospital or whatever. It just says care. or something like this, or health, good health. And people most of the time won't even see that this is not a doctor, this is not a hospital, this is just someone wearing a white blouse that says care. And if you ask them what did they see, they tell you, oh, I saw a doctor, he looked like from a big hospital. And that the message was therefore more credible. The credibility of the source is very important because it makes people trust the information more and therefore act on the information much more. There is obviously a difference if it's for a profit or non-profit organization. If it's for a profit organization, the credibility of the source is always lower for an organization that says something. So like Arrowhead Water CEO tell you that their water is pure, it comes from springs, it has this and that and all of these minerals. I mean, this is the CEO of Arrowhead Water. They have a benefit and a conflict of interest in telling you that the water is the best, obviously. So versus if it's a non-profit and the person is telling you, we won't make any money, but we just want you to know that this is available and it's a really good product. People would say, oh, I can't see the conflict of interest for them to be lying. Therefore, I believe them. So that credibility is very important. When you're looking for spokespeople, when you're looking for endorsers, who is the best person? Is the best person the person that looks like the stereotype of the consumer? And then they see the person recommending it just looks like the one that is supposed to buy it. And then you feel that therefore you can trust this person. Should be someone very famous, but then it's unrelated, but very famous. I mean, that people, if you ask them, that people say, oh, that doesn't work, but it works all the time. You just use someone famous. The problem with someone famous is it costs a lot of money. And you could almost get the same with someone that is not as famous, but has the expertise. So then the expertise is maybe, you know, I remember an ad where they were using people with a German accent, and they were talking about the quality of the product and the engineering of the product, and they were just hiring people with speaking English with a German accent. And the idea there was for people to realize that therefore it must be very genuine because they had some serious engineers do this. These are paid actors. They may not even be German. They may have they may be actors that have been trained to speak with a German accent, and they are not even German. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the consumers, if that's how they feel, it's not. You can't blame the person sending the message to be sort of generating a more constructive, positive perception of what you're trying to say. The campaign can be evaluated on two main things. One is the communication effect, meaning do people remember the ad? Did they understand the ad? Did they like the ad? And then the one that is the most important is, did they buy after they saw the ad? So the ad can be directly connected with the fact that they purchased. And then my last information here I want to talk about is the fact that there are 4 simple ways of setting up a communication budget. The easiest method is, how much can I afford? And so that's the one I see the most common with the small businesses is they have a budget for the year. They set aside $5,000, and then with $5,000, they just use that in order to communicate. That's a very, it's too basic because it doesn't take into account what you want to achieve. So the objective and task is the one that define what do we want to reach? What are our objectives? And for these objectives, how much do we need to spend in advertising? A week ago, there was the Wells Fargo Center annual event. And that's a discussion I had with all the people training for this event. Is I told them, when you speak to investors, you don't want to tell them, okay, we're going to use $50,000 for the communication budget. And then you figure, oh, 50,000 is quite a lot. They should be pretty happy. That means we're going to do something. No, investors are not worried about it, investing $1 million if you have to, as long as it's very clear why you need $1 million and what you expect from this $1 million. If from using $1 million communication, you're going to make $10 more million from that activity, they're not going to care spending the $1 million. Maybe you need more investors in order to cover a larger amount. But people are not worried of spending more to get more. What they're worried is spending $50,000 and you don't cover that because you haven't really planned how you're going to communicate. And in fact, you're not frugal. $50,000 is a lot of money. So therefore, in between these two is maybe the good balance. In between meanings that you need to think about what are the objectives that I want to achieve, and you have different layers of objectives. You have the minimum objective, the moderate objective, the very good objectives, and the dream of objective. And then you have a budget for the dream and for the minimum, and then you try to balance all of this and find what's the right mix combination. So it would be affordable versus objective as a combination. But there are other methods that are quite simple. One is simple, the other one not so much. So the simple one is percentage of sales. So you say, we want to increase the sales by 20%. Therefore, we're going to increase the budget for next year by 20%. So that's one method. Or you say, we want to increase the sales by 20%, and therefore the budget in order to get that, let's say you're just starting. Last year, how much did you spend in advertising? Zero. A company didn't exist, so you can't increase zero by 20%. So then you do like an objective on task based on what you think you're going to reach the sales. So objective on task is you want to sell this many products, to be in this many markets, in this many stores, and to make this much money. Or you could just say, just the sales. We want to make $1 million. And to make $1 million, how much communication do we need? And again, you can use the break-even analysis in order to see how much you need to sell, how many units, how much communication you need to add to the units, how many activities you need to have in order to be able to balance this. The last one is simple to explain, but not so simple to do. It's the competitive parity. So you're looking at your competitors and looking at all the things that they do in terms of communication. So you need to spend the time doing an inventory on all the activities of communication. And then you sort of estimate how much they've spent. You sort of guess estimate their budget in communication. And then you try to be in all the communication situation that they're spending in order to be at the same level. So who does that? Small companies looking at their competitors, and like I was just talking about a few minutes ago about the trade show, you go to the trade show, your competitors go, and you figure that you have to spend this kind of money. Or big companies, what they do is they have a team which is constantly evaluating the communication done by the competitors. It's like Coca-Cola evaluating what Pepsi is doing all the time. Oh, they're sponsoring this event. Oh, we should sponsor a similar event or be the sponsor next year. And they keep trying to estimate this. So I am not going to review all the 6 methods of communications. I'm only going to focus on sales promotion, PR, and advertising. These are the one that you are not as familiar. And so that's why I want to spend more time on them. So sales promotion is a mass communication technique where you offering short-term incentives to your consumers in order to encourage them to buy. The idea is to give them a reason to buy now and to make them buy something that they may have considered before, but they were on sort of the edge, maybe because of the price, or maybe because they would never buy it. And so you give them the incentive to buy it because there's a price discount. So you encourage them to try something new. What kind of sales promotion you have? is you could be producing samples. So why are samples very important? Well, samples are sort of one of the cheapest sales promotion method, and yet one of the most effective. Oftentimes, we think when we need to do sales promotion, we need to spend a lot of money on social media. Well, what about giving samples? What about thinking about a way for people to be able to experience the product in a short term or a reduced version for them to see that there's a definite benefit and this is better. So samples are very important. Everybody can do samples. Making free samples is very important. Not everyone sees that. I've worked with all kinds of different people. I've worked with people that were from one country versus another. I've worked with some people that were not rich, became rich. I worked with some people that were always rich, are still rich. I work with some people that have been extremely successful and all kinds of variation. But the one thing that I always find interesting is how few people really, also few people really actually care for samples. Actually, it's funny because the short little time that I took the break, I looked at one of my email and there was an email actually that was a discussion about samples. And it's very common that people think that it's bad business to give free samples. I think it's bad business to give too many free samples. But I think it's bad business not to give free samples. So there's sort of a balance when it comes to samples that is very important. Well, I spend a long time with samples because like I see people not totally understand it in the industry. I see some people spending too much on it sometimes as well. So you have to be very careful, but you almost could use the word always in this situation, always use samples. Coupons, people know what they are. Cash refunds, you know what they are. Price packs is a reduced price mark for the specific package you're buying. Premiums is you have free goods offered with the product, and advertising specialties where you give people something free as a gift, like a free pen, a free baseball hat or something as they are purchasing the products. But again, the sample, I think, is the one that you cannot not do. But then you have to think about, if people think of your generation, I think when they discuss samples, they go, oh, we need to give it to the influencers. Of course, you want to give samples to the influencers, but the cost is oftentimes not always, but oftentimes not in the samples. Like oftentimes, but not. For example, for my cognac business, giving free cognac to the influencers, the cost is not the free cognac. It's actually that you have to pay and sort of bribe the influencers to say good things about you. In my watch business, the problem of the samples is it's not the bribe that I have to give to the influencers to talk about it. It's the cost of giving them a watch. The watch I produce are very expensive, and giving them a watch, it's several $1,000s per influencer. It's a big expense. I mean, with the right influencer, it may be really worth it, but overall, that's an expensive gift. And bribing them ends up being cheaper. So depending what industry, the price of the units that you're selling, the number of units that you're planning to sell. Obviously, if you're not selling many units, the samples it's going to be crazy. But you could have samples that you don't give away, but that people are able to use so they can do a review on it, and they had the opportunity to be one of the few to be able to just use it or to have it in their own hands. So all of these are the basic elements that you can have as samples of sales promotion. You're very familiar with what you may not be familiarized what comes next. What you do is you also work not always and only on the consumers, giving incentives to the consumers. You also want to give incentives to the channel of distribution, and therefore that's the push strategy. So if the wholesaler or the retailer buys more products, you give them a discount. If they place it in a better space in the store, you give them a discount. If they put it in their own advertising, you give them a discount. You give them some money to participate in the advertising that they're spending for their own retail or wholesale. So example is a leaflet, example is a tasting event, example is a trade show, and so you participate in the trade show of your wholesalers. So discounts that you give, either you give more products, or you give a reduction of price, or you give them samples that they can actually use as samples or also sell. That normally you would want them to use them as samples and not sell them. Allowances is when you actually pay. So you participate in their costs. So you participate in their advertising, you participate in events, you participate in giving them a special product that they would carry, and they need maybe an expert to do a review, a journalist to do a review, or you give them a display. So you give them roll-ups, posters, graphic designs for the event, for the trade show, for the booth, or something like that. So when you sell through the communication, is you have to think about the media selection, and the media selection is based on how many people you think will be seeing the message. So the reach is how many of your targets will actually see the message. The frequency is how many times are they going to see the message, and the media impact is what is this media does in terms of impact. Is it something that they trust and therefore it takes their attention and they sort of learn from it? Or is it something that they usually use in order to make purchase decisions? So different media have different impacts in terms of the behavior that follows the exposure. All right, so this I talked about. When you think about the sales promotion, you think therefore of creating incentives, you have to decide the size of the incentives. So you could try to have the same size incentives than your competitor, size of incentives. You can think about who participates. So it could be only new customers, or it could be people that have bought a certain amount. So people that bought 5 times, they can participate on the 6th time, or more than 10 times, they can participate. People that have never bought, people have not bought for a year, so because, sometimes I think it's interesting how they decide who participates. Like, you have never bought, I give you 10% off. You buy every day, you don't get a percentage. When you think about it, it would be, there's no point in giving a discount to someone that buys every day. They buy every day. Well, wait a minute. If they buy every day, they are a big buyer. Maybe if you give them a discount, that day they will be buying much more. They'll they'll use the discount, they'll just buy more. There may be some people that just buy exactly the same, and you just lost money because they were going to buy anyway. Versus if you try to give an incentive to someone that never bought, they may not buy at all. They never bought, they will never buy. Or you may give them the extra incentives that they finally buy and they continue buying, or they only buy for that one incentives. So deciding on who's going to buy, there's not a cookie cutter that says only give it to the people that never bought, because that's part of your expenses. You can also reward people that buy a lot and buy regularly, because it makes them feel very special. And these are the people that, in a way, you want to really nurture and pamper. So the promotion, how are you going to let people know that there's this promotion? That's very important. The length of the program, that's why is the length important? If you make it last too long, therefore people don't think it's anything special. If you make it happen too often, they're going to think that you're really charging them every time you sell something, and they should be buying when you have a discount, because you have so many discounts that's sort of is the norm. And what is the norm? The normal price or the discount price? I mean, you have 50% of the time a discount price. That's the norm, not the normal price. You're stupid if you buy the normal price. So you have to be very careful of the time and the repetition of the sales promotion, because you could alienate, it could go against you when you're actually doing sales promotion, because the benefit is to create an instant incentives that generate an extra sales. So what is public relations? Public relation is very important because it's a communication method that is oftentimes misunderstood and underappreciated. The idea is that it's very much like a journalist, is you creating content, and you're creating content which is in your favor, that you are spreading through the media for people to learn, but not directly from the company. So what you do is you create content that you give to journalists, and then journalists place it in their normal content. Then what you hope is that they use this because it's a valuable content that helps their readers. But most of the time, what the journalists will ask you to is to pay for the publication of this content. So fine, you create the content, it's supposed to be free, it's supposed to be information, and the journalist will put it somewhere and put a little bit of information before and after and change some of the text, but you will pay for it. So it's a sort of a hidden advertising, if you want. Then what also happens is if you do this enough, then there is a situation where you have a relationship with those journalists and those media where you can ask them for favors. So eventually those media, they owe you, because you've been spending so much money, to take some of your information and put it for free into editorials that you don't have to pay for. So that's what you hope. And little by little, that's what you will get because of the expenditures that you have. So it takes money to get free things. So you don't get free things or free things forever. You may start free, then you have to pay, then you've paid so much that you ask for things free. It's part of a circle of a good relationship. But public relation is not just that. Public relation is very much creating content for all the avenues of content. And it's also for fending off unfavorable publicity that you may have. You know, unfavorable publicity because maybe your competitor, in a very sort of unethical way, have been spreading rumors on you, and therefore you want to sort of erase those rumors or convert these rumors or that redirect those rumors. You may have some new products to talk about to investors. So what are the task is you speak to the press, you create publicity. So, you know, information about the product that you try to push everywhere. You talk with the media, you talk with the public, you talk with the lobby, you talk with investors, and you just develop the corporate image. So not just the image of the brand and the product that you're selling, but the corporate image of the company that you have. You show that it's a company that cares for their employees. You show it's a company that cares for the community. You show that it's a company that cares for the future and the sustainability of the product that they produce. You show that this is not just a for-profit company that cares about just making profit, but it cares about the fact that it has a welfare in the environment. So you generate news, you create the speeches, you also organize the events and the trade shows and the festivals. You write the materials, you create visual material as well. As I said, you work on the corporate identity. You work in a way as a lobby also with the services. And then you do catalogs, annual reports, websites, and social media. A lot of this, it's funny, this was in 2010 or something like this, or maybe before actually. I used to tell my students, so more than 10 years ago, that a lot of them were going to work in social media. And when I was telling them that, and we were in the classroom, I could see the reaction, and I would say 70% of the students say, no, I'll never work in social media. I won't work in social media. And I would tell them, you work in Instagram, you work in Facebook, you'll create pseudonyms, you'll have multiple identities, and you will be entering information for the content of your company in order to create some positive word of mouth. And they would say, oh, you can't do that. Nobody does that. That's illegal. No, you can't do that. They were right in the sense that 10 or 15 years ago, this was new and big companies were not doing that. But now it's actually a job, and most of the students that graduate end up doing that. In fact, when we do consulting services for the businesses that you've sent me quite a lot recently, businesses to get extra credit, and that's great. Thank you very much. When we consult with these businesses and we try to help them to do better, this need for social media is always there, and they need help 95% of the time, if not more. So it is very important. So this is to say that public relation is a very big job, which is growing, and most of you will work in some capacity in public relation very soon or sometime in your career. So public relation, the steps are setting up some objectives. So, improving the people's perceptions, being more positive about your company is the most common one. Then what would be the message? So you create the content, you create the slogan, you create the YouTube video or whatever, and then you implement it, and then you see if it was effective. The last communication method I want to talk about is advertising. Advertising is therefore paid, and it directly connected with the person who is paying. So it's very identified who is paying the brand, and it's non-personal. It's not directed to you. It's directed to whoever is watching this magazine or this listening to that radio and so forth. The 7 major advertising media are the television, the radio, magazine, newspaper, internet, and outdoor billboard, plus social media, and another one I'm missing there is applications. So applications, apps are now also part of the advertising media, which they do several roles. The application, they are part of the advertising, but they're also part of the sales channel, because people through the apps can actually buy, but through the apps they're also learning. So now I want to show you something that has to do with the specific subject, but it's not discussed in the textbook, but it's something that's extremely important, mostly if you care to be working in management or marketing, or more specifically in advertising. So when we write a plan as a marketer, we call it marketing plan. However, when you write a plan in advertising, you could call it advertising plan. That's sort of the commoners will call them advertising plan. The real name is actually copy strategy. So the copy strategy is equal to advertising plan. So it's a synonym. If you work in advertising, you don't make advertising plan, because obviously that's their specialty. So they call it the copy strategy. So if someone talks about what is the copy, and you hear this in communication, means they talk about the advertising plan. So these are details, and I will not ask you specific details on this in the final, because it's personally, I find it important to know about this, because you don't want to look like you're ignorant when you speak to people in advertising, and you will speak with people in advertising. You will maybe work in advertising, so you want to have this as the basics of the basics, the 101 of it as a minimum. But in the quiz, I will only ask you a simple question, which is, what is the name, what is the professional and a technical term for also used when talking about an advertising plan. So then I'm going to have 4 or 5 answers, and one is correct, and it's going to be the copy strategy. But if we look inside, and you're curious to learn about what's inside the copy strategy, is there's different terms. The people that work in advertising are more, creative people, artistic people. So they gave them, I would say, more fancy terms that I would say management people will do for sure. So the first element is called the nature. So what is the issue to solve? What is the problem that you're facing and that you're trying to resolve? Then the second part is the communication objective. So that's more common, who is the target and what is it that you're trying to change for the target? And the third element is define the psychological incentives. So here, it's a little bit like I was talking about before when I talked about encoding and decoding. So what are the elements that are the key elements that are the trigger, the stimulus to get people to think and to want to learn more or maybe buy the product? So what are the just noticeable difference and the words that may be the keywords that they will that you will get their attention? So motivation and ability. So are they ready to buy? How much do they know? They know very little. What are the steps that we need to have in order to get to the point that will reach the objectives, which may be sales? Then the creative is what are the style? So the creative is going to be talking about, are they going to be, is it going to be simple, sophisticated? Are we going to talk about the benefits at the beginning or at the end? Are there going to be lots of actors? Are they going to be words? Are they going to be images? Is it going to be black and white color? What's the background? Is it in America? Is it overseas? So all of this. And finally, the theme, which is essentially all the elements of knowledge that you need to associate and understand. So how much do they know? How much can this be associated with other things that they know? What are the keywords again? We go back to that. And what is the value of those keywords? And again, you can't use too many words. So you want to pick the words that are the most suggestive and related to what the target wants to hear. Now, another thing that is not in the textbook, but which I think is very interesting if you really care for advertising, and usually that's a subject that students care because they can see that's interesting and it's going to be used forever, I suppose. So there are 3 directions that a message goes to. One direction is focused on the message, on the product. Sorry, one message focused on the product. So most of the message is showing you the product and nothing else. Another one is focused on the result, the performance of the product. It's like you will buy it because it's safer. And then you show the safety. You will buy it because that's how it looks. That's the product. And then the third one is it's called the universe, focused on the universe. So the focused on the universe is who's buying it. So it means what kind of people are buying it. Old, young, men, women, educated, poor, like you, not like you. So that's the universe. In what area, in what setting, in what day, in what month. There's a cultural background. There is sort of an environment that is very much the environment. People may buy a certain product because of the perceived environment, and it doesn't have to be true, but that's how they feel. So that's called the universe. Let's look at 3 examples. If we're looking at this particular product and thinking about those three directions, the product, the performance, and the universe, what would you say this image here is focused on? Is it focused on the product? Is it focused on the performance? Or is it focused on the universe? What would you say?
It's focused on the product.
Yes, Angel. Was it Angel?
Irene.
Oh, Irene, sorry. So, Irene, you're correct. It's simply focused on the product. So this one was easy because you could see not every ad is focused on one. Oftentimes, as the example you will see next, oftentimes there's a combination, sometimes of two, sometimes of three, but there's always one that is primary. Sort of one is primary, one is secondary, one is third, or sometimes you have just one and two. You know, it could be product and environment, universe. Here it was very clearly, that's why I had that one as the first, very simple. It's just a product. Now there is an ad for Coca-Cola, and this one says the party starts here. And you see the side of the bottle, and you can see this is like probably a sunset. Is it focused on the product, the performance, or the universe?
I would say like the product and universe. I feel like it's implying like your life and just like enjoying life. And then the Coke, to me, it kind of looks like a hill, like a mountain.
Yes,
But you can also see that, it's the bottle of Coca-Cola.
that's right. So the you see, if it was the product, we would see much more of the product. So I believe it is first the universe and then the product. So why is it more the universe? Is because if we had to say a percentage of how much do we see the bottle, I would say we see maybe a third, maybe even a little bit less than a third. So therefore, versus we can see that it's more of an ambience. It's an atmosphere, the atmosphere of a situation that is warm, a situation where you are like on vacation, maybe there's the mountains, maybe there's the beach, and then you look at the word and it says the party starts here. So someone is in a party or starting a party, and here's a Coke. So the Coke is like, there's maybe a little bit of performance as well. Maybe it's like 60% universe, or maybe maybe 55% universe, 35% product, and then whatever is left, maybe 10%, just the performance, which is that it's like an accessory for partying, for being happy and dancing or meeting people or something like that. It's like an accessory for happiness in a way. So those three were combined, and you see it's a little bit more difficult. And so when you are an advertiser, you don't do that because you're creative. Every word, every angles, every color, everything has a meaning, and it can be interpreted many different ways. But what's important is how it gets interpreted by your target. If it's interpreted by the wrong way by someone, and that someone is not your target, it doesn't matter that they interpreted the wrong way. If you have 100 people and 100 people interpreted wrong, but the 100 people are not your target, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you have 100 people that are your target and you have 95 that gets it. So that's why communication it's you don't want to be letting yourself evaluated by the wrong evaluator and take their judgment into consideration. Only the valid evaluation is the one that comes from the valid evaluator. Okay, so here's another one. So it says kilometer, etc., 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 and it says Golf, Volkswagen. So Volkswagen is a manufacturer of cars, and the Golf is a model of car that is sometimes called Rabbit in the United States. And it shows the dial, and this is the odometer, and it says etc., etc., and etc. Does it show the product? Does it show the universe? Or does it show the performance?
Say what's our performance first.
Yes, it's performance first. In fact, yeah, what do you think? Performance.
Yeah, it just shows. I think it's performance first, and like because golf is like lower to the bottom right, then it turns to product. It's like where your eyes lead you first.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
even when you think about it, the product, I mean, how much, like if I had to tell you, describe me how this car looks, you can't. describe the car, right? Is it a
No.
sports car? Is it so the product, I would say it's like if there's a percentage, I mean, you see the dial, but that dial is sort of not so much the dial that we see today, but the dial that we used to see is very standard to the conventional dial. So there's not really much of a presentation of the product. The universe, I mean, who's using it, where they're using it, zero. So it's almost like a 99.9% performance and 0.01% product made.
I think they're more so realizing on the idea that they've marketed the car,
Yes,
the Golf car, the Volkswagen, a good amount. So now they're gonna focus on a different area of it, which is performance. But
exactly.
people know what Golf is based on the logo, so they
Yeah,
can
yes,
bottom right, but still maintaining the
that's very
Golf.
true. Yes, absolutely true. So you wouldn't want to just do that, because people buy what with their eyes, and they buy a car with how they feel when they look at it. So you're absolutely right. That would be within a campaign where they would have isolated a number of things where they would say, oh, people like the car, so we need to show this car in a nice environment with good pictures. And then we need to see this car in a racing situation because they care about the performance. And then they also care about the fact that it has to be reliable. And to make it reliable, how to have a picture that, communicate reliability, and just that, nothing else, simple, to the point, reliability, but in a clever way. And so how do oftentimes what people say, communicate reliability, is they're going to say, oh, did we win the JD Power and Associate most reliable car of the year? Did we do the top 5? Yes, we did. And then you put it there. You say JD Power and Associate rated us as one of the top 5 medium-sized sedan, blah blah blah, most reliable. Okay, fine, but you have to rely on someone else to do that. If you want to do it on yourself and communicate the message, here you go. So yes. So let's look at a few more. What about, okay, so that one is a little tricky because it's actually written in French. It's a preserve, and it's a crab preserve. And so you can see that the preserve has been opened, and you can see that the inside of the preserve is scratched by the crab. I forgot the name you call this, the crab fingers or whatever.
Claw.
Yes, claws, yes. And so it's scratched by the crab claws. And it's French, it says exterior sign of freshness.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's just promoting freshness because it's like they're alive in the can before you open it.
Yeah, it's like super fresh. And so what are they promoting? Are they promoting the universe, the performance, or the product?
I'd say it's product and I say it's mostly product, but I guess maybe universe as well.
No, the universe, you don't see it.
Yeah, matter of fact, nah, not you. I think it's probably just product. I don't see.
But it's not so much the product, because think about it. What are you buying?
Crab?
Do you see the crab?
No. You see the claw.
You barely see the claw, just enough so you can see that that's what did the scratching. And so therefore it's not promoting the product, it's promoting the freshness. And so the freshness is not the universe. The universe is if you saw a bunch of people having a party, and everybody will be very happy, and everybody will be dressed like a Thanksgiving dinner, right? And then it says Nautilus for the people that care to serve only the best, or something like that. And then you say, oh, you see the product, but what it's doing is the universe. Is if it's Thanksgiving, if it's serious, and it's really time to eat the best thing, that's when you spend the money, and that's when you look for the crab that makes sense for that kind of situation, and that's what Nautilus is about. That would be a universe. You don't see anyone, you don't see any background. I mean, the background is white. You can't beat a negative, a zero, a neutral universe. There's no more neutral than a white background. So the universe is zero. You can't, no environment. But then, can you see the product? Well, I mean, if I was to say, you know what you're eating, you say no. I mean, I just see a corner of the preserve. So the message, a little bit like the Volkswagen, when it says etc. etc., it's to tell you, oh, that's reliability. Here, the message is freshness. So it's the performance of the product. You want freshness? Because, you know, when you buy crab, actually last weekend I had crab. On Sunday, I was not feeling good. I had sushi with crabs, Saturday. And then on Sunday, I was like, oh, I'm feeling terrible. And I'm guessing it was from the crab sushi that I had the night before. So when you eat, you know, sushi and all this, I mean, you want a good taste and all that, but there's one thing you want is you don't want to be sick the same day or the day before. So freshness is, when it comes to crab, I'm sure for most people, that would be the first or second most important thing. Maybe it's freshness, then flavor, and then price, right? Origin, and then is it humanly harvested or whatever, but freshness will come at the top. So how do you communicate about the performance of being fresh? And that's how they came up with the idea, is that you can show the preserve being scratched from the inside. Some people would say, oh, I really don't like this had. That means that this crab was dying in there. You know, I wish it was put in there, not alive. So it's true. Suddenly they could say, oh, there's a deeper interpretation of this preserve that could actually be seen as negative. But then we have to think about how people do think deep and that deep. And can you make a message that 100% of the people get it, think it's fantastic, and act on? No, you can't. There's always some misinterpretation. Yes.
I was about to say that it goes back to what you said about it doesn't, like, even if people do find it, because it's a bold kind of statement to make that it's so fresh that like the crab is so alive. And it goes back to what you said, that it doesn't matter if it offends someone who's not your target.
Yeah. Oh yes, Brian, you could not. I'm very excited because that means you understood everything. When you make a message, you're not trying to look for universal understanding. It's only the one of your target. And you know, this is true for so many things. Do not let other people judge you who are not the people that you want to be judged by. So, you know, I mean, it's like people are very sensitive to what people say and think and all this. If these people don't matter to you, why would you care for what they have to say? So that's a very important thing in communication. Only care for your target and their perception. So some people would say, you know what, I totally agree. It's like whenever I do something, if my family likes it, I'm fine with it. If they don't like it, then I need to do something about it. Beside my family, who cares what the other people think? Perfect. That's exactly what I was trying to say. Is if your target for what you do and what you say comes, is the measuring stick is your family. And if your family is okay with it, maybe it's okay. It's just an example to explain how communication is. So if this, you know, and that's sometimes what happens with the best ad of the year. Sometimes the best ads of the year are measured by advertising consultants. And sometimes you look at the ad and you go, wow, that's a really cool ad. But only a advertising consultant will really think this is fantastic because they are in their own bubble. But the consumer, it's not for sure that they will think it's the best one. So when you look at the best ads of the year, you have to look at the one measured by the advertising agency versus the one measured by the consumer. And it's rarely the same ad that they all like. We have like 15 minutes to finish. I want to finish on this because this is important. It's going to be in the quiz, but that's not the only reason why it's important. It will not be, I don't expect this to be very difficult in the quiz because this is the so many times that we've repeated that, but it's sort of a good way to finish when we talked about marketing since January. You know, what is marketing again? Marketing is about serving someone's satisfaction. What's the closest word that you can use when you talk about marketing? It's satisfaction. What do is you look at people's needs and you try to develop a just noticeable difference in order to satisfy their needs. These are what we call opportunities, and opportunities are things that you cannot change. The opportunities are things that you're not going to do. Opportunities are things that exist in the market that you can take advantage of. So what you do is you create, you maintain, and you enhance relationship with people. So when you are in marketing, you care for people and you care for having a positive relationship with them. you try to make the world better around you and better for the people who you care. Again, you're trying to change the world for everybody. That's very difficult. Maybe someone can do that. Maybe the government can do this. Maybe religion could do that. However, when you're in marketing, you can't have, I mean, it would be nice to have these objectives, but at least the objective is to change the world in a better world for one specific group that you call your target. Remember when we talked about segmentation, targeting, and positioning, we also said that there could be several targets together. And this is called a concentrated targeting strategy. So you don't always serve one single target because that's called differentiated. Concentrated targeting strategy is when you concentrate on several at the same time. So having too many targets at once, you could say we concentrate on all the targets that exist, so therefore it's universal. The problem is you cannot be, very rarely, if never, you can create a product that is universally perfect. So you only try to focus again on who you can serve. The idea is relationship. Why do you care for a relationship? Is because once you have a relationship, you have a continuous business, and it's very expensive to work on new relationships. So you keep nurturing existing relationship, and that makes you more successful. So again, you identify needs and you satisfy these needs by creating a new product that will focus on delivering the value and satisfaction to your consumers, so that way they can come back for the new generation or for the same product, and you make money from this. What do people buy? They buy value. What's value is the difference between what they buy and what they get. So therefore, value and satisfaction are very important. Value is what they measure first, and satisfaction before they buy, and satisfaction is what they measure after. If they are satisfied, they come back. If they are dissatisfied, they may not come back. They may come back if you have a relationship with them. So if you satisfy them and you care for them, and it may be a time where you do something that doesn't satisfy them, if you had this relationship, they won't hold it against you, and they will give you a benefit of the doubt. But if you keep dissatisfying them, they will go somewhere else. So how do you build this value and satisfaction is you look at what they want, but you also look at what your competitors offer. So what your competitors offer in this review is called benchmarking. Benchmarking is analyzing your competitor strengths and weaknesses, but not only that, their strategies, their new product development, their innovation, their positioning, the capacity of their brand, the resources that they have, their strategies, their tactics, if you can. Trying to analyze as much as you can and learn from what your competitors could do next, could do against you next, what you could learn from them, anticipate what they could do to you. It's essentially some kind of intelligence that you want to have to better anticipate and also save time and save frustration of discovering things and being surprised by something that they may be doing. So once you've done all of this research, then you start thinking about planning all of this. And the planning all of this is planned within a framework called the marketing plan. So the marketing plan is the plan that you unfold and eventually implement through your tactics. Tactics and strategies are not the same. Tactics are details, are sub-elements that need to be completed, they're short-term, to complete the strategies, which are the big ideas, which are very much summarized into several strategies that we'll look again. So you don't confuse your strategies and your tactics. Marketing is implemented through the mix, the marketing mix, and the marketing mix are your 4 Ps. You try to look in the future, and to look in the future, you develop examination called the SWOT analysis. Where do you look when you look for the SWOT analysis? You look in your environment. Your environment is made of the macro environment and micro environment. This is your mine, where you will be mining the elements for the SWOT. SW is internal, O and T is external. Which one is the most difficult in the SWOT analysis? And I'm smiling because I'm like hoping that I have 91 people here, and I should have 91 people that tell me which one is harder, because you've been doing it for 3 months.
Opportunities.
Opportunity.
Yes, the opportunity.
External.
Yes, external. So external is much more difficult, and within external, the opportunities. And I'm so excited to hear that you even answered better than me, because you say external opportunities. So that's even more complete. Thank you very much. The SW, for the most part, it's easier. You know, sometimes it's hard to do the SW because when the company belongs to you, you know, like you have a family business, and it's a family business that you've had for 2-3 generations. And to doing a SW is very hard. It's much easier for someone who is external to look at what you're doing and what are your strengths and weaknesses. Much easier than someone from inside.
Also external threats, no, Professor?
Yes, so I would say the hardest one, external is harder. By far, the hardest one is opportunities, followed by the threats, and then doing the SW. I would say the weaknesses is the third, and then the strengths is the fourth. So strengths is the easiest. What is the company's strengths? You know, if you have a business and someone asks you what are your strengths, and it takes you a long time to tell them what are your strengths,
Strengths.
yeah, that's a weakness you have. Is that you can tell the weakness is for you not to know your strengths, for sure. Jumping very quick to strategic business units and the fact that you should be looking at your different products within the BCG matrix, the concept that you have different level of market share within different product growth. And when you're analyzing a product portfolio, you want to see which one of your products are you have the biggest share, the small share, which one is in the market that is growing faster and so forth. Because oftentimes companies, so we see the more that your company is older and mature, the more you have a product line and many products in the product line. Imagine Coca-Cola that's 5,000 products. If you have 5,000 products, these people do the BCG matrix probably once a month just to see where each one of these products go within each one of the quadrants to see which one they should invest more, which one they should be communicating more, which one they should innovate more, which one they should let go, and so forth. So this is going back to what's a strategy, what's a tactic. They're not the same thing. The tactics is the implementation that you need to do in order to achieve your strategies. What are the strategies? There's the 4 basic strategies. So I won't go into that because this will be my 100th time discussing what that is. I expect that these I will see in your paper, so I can give you and my assistant a high grade. It's that simple. But there are other strategies beside the 4 basics. There's also the competitive strategies. There's also some strategies based on a product or a service. There's the strategy also looking at other ways you can be competitive from a market share or for the type of customers that you focus on. So what's important to see is that there's the big idea that feeds into smaller ideas. The big ideas will be described as your strategies, and the smaller ideas will be described as your tactics. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor. Good night.
Thank you.